May you never be blindsided by the people you trust. May every person listening find protection from secret enemies. And may God expose every betrayal before it harms your destiny. My beautiful online family, I see you watching, loving these stories quietly. But don't just watch. Tap that like button so this blessing reaches someone who needs it tonight. Because this Christmas story? It begins with a man walking into his office before sunrise and finding his business partner, his brother of 10 years, sitting on the floor sobbing, whispering into the phone, "I can't hide it anymore. They paid me to ruin him." And that man was supposed to ruin Daniel Carter. But God had already given Daniel the truth months before. Daniel Carter grew up with one prayer: Lord, let me build the kind of stability I never had. No father to guide him, no financial security, no role models who stayed long enough to help him breathe. He knew one thing: loyalty was rare, and betrayal was normal. So when he met Victor Hale in college, the charming, sharp, good-hearted guy everyone liked, Daniel felt like he had finally found a brother. Together, they built Carter and Hale Logistics from one rented truck into a thriving company that fed dozens of families. Daniel thought they were unbreakable. But Christmas was coming, and the truth was about to show him that the greatest danger doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes, it lives in your office, smiles with you, laughs with you, shares lunch with you, and waits for the perfect moment to strike. Daniel Carter had always believed that you could build a better life if you worked harder than your demons. It was a belief forged in childhood, where he watched his mother take double shifts at a diner just to keep their old apartment warm through the winter, where he watched his father start business after business, losing every single one because he trusted the wrong people. His father used to say, "A handshake is a man's soul." But Daniel learned the hard truth early. Some men's souls were cheap. And that's why Daniel built Carter and Hale Logistics with caution. Not fear, caution. Systems, checks, records, boundaries. But even with all that, he trusted Victor. Victor Hale was everything Daniel wasn't. Outgoing, smooth-talking, stylish. The kind of man who could walk into a room and have 3 new friends in 10 seconds. A natural charmer with a smile that could sell ice to a snowman. They complemented each other perfectly. Daniel handled the operations, the planning, the discipline. Victor handled negotiations, clients, marketing, the social side. They built something powerful together. By their 10th Christmas, they were pulling in multi-million-dollar contracts, negotiating nationwide shipping routes, and talking about expanding into other states. Clients called them the unstoppable duo. But Daniel had noticed something recently. A shift. Victor had started arriving late, hiding phone calls, dodging financial reports, smiling too big whenever someone from Irongate Logistics called him. At first, Daniel brushed it off as stress. But then shipments started going missing. A client quietly switched over to Irongate without giving a reason. A confidential proposal leaked. Then another. And another. Daniel didn't accuse him. He didn't confront him. He didn't shout. Instead, he watched. He remembered his father's failures and did the opposite. He documented everything. He backed up files. He hired a private investigator, Mason Clark, who specialized in corporate espionage. For months, Daniel carried the weight of suspicion alone. The hardest part wasn't the business losses. It was the emotional ones. He wanted to believe Victor would never betray him, that their brotherhood meant more than money to him, that loyalty still existed in this world. But every day the evidence grew louder. One night, a cold early December evening, Mason called with a voice that sounded heavier than usual. "Daniel," he said, "you need to prepare yourself. Victor's in deep. Irongate has him wrapped around their finger. They've done this to 3 companies before. They always pick the weaker partner, groom him, and use him to destroy the whole business from the inside." Daniel sat in silence, snow drifting down outside his window like tiny white lies. "Why Victor?" he whispered. "Because he wants to be admired," Mason replied. "And Irongate made him believe you were holding him back." Daniel felt something inside him fracture, not break, not shatter, just fracture. A fracture that would turn into strength later. He thanked Mason, hung up, poured himself a glass of water, and did what he always did in crisis. He planned. He prayed. And he waited. It was 2 weeks before Christmas when everything finally snapped. Daniel arrived at the office before sunrise, something he had started doing because Victor was showing up earlier than usual, acting suspiciously. But today, Daniel wasn't prepared for what he found. Victor was on the floor in the conference room, knees pulled to his chest, stacks of shredded papers around him. His hands were shaking. His phone lay on speaker beside him. A cold, unfamiliar voice growled, "If you don't finish the job by Friday, consider the deal off, and consider yourself finished too." Victor choked out a sob. I can't do it anymore. He trusted me. I can't hide it. I can't." He paused. His eyes lifted. And Daniel was standing in the doorway. Frozen. Silent. Watching the man he loved like a brother crumble in real time. Victor's face drained of color. "Daniel." Daniel slowly stepped forward and placed a thick, sealed folder on the table. Victor stared at it. Then at Daniel. Then back at the folder. "What is that?" he whispered. Daniel's voice was calm. Too calm. "Everything you've been doing for the last 6 months." Victor's mouth fell open. You knew." Daniel nodded once. "Enough to protect the company before you destroyed it." Victor broke completely. His breathing jagged. His hands trembling. His secrets, all of them, exposed under the cold fluorescent lights. He collapsed onto the carpet, sobbing uncontrollably as Daniel stood over him, heartbroken yet strong. The betrayal was real. Confirmed. Undeniable. But the war was only beginning. Comment below. If you discovered your business partner was secretly working with your enemy, would you confront them immediately, or would you gather evidence quietly like Daniel? I want to know your decision. Like the story if you're hooked. Share this video if you believe betrayals are always exposed. Victor Hale had always been addicted to attention. Daniel just never realized how deep the addiction ran. Long before the betrayal began, the seeds were planted quietly, invisibly, like mold creeping under wallpaper. All it took was time, pressure, and the right temperature for the infection to bloom. And Irongate Logistics knew exactly how to manipulate the weather. It started at the State Logistics Expo the year before, the same expo where Carter and Hale won Regional Innovator of the Year. Daniel remembered the night clearly. He was exhausted, satisfied, and ready to head home. Victor, however, was buzzing like a man who had just tasted fame for the first time and couldn't go back to normal air. Victor thrived on praise. He needed it like oxygen. And Irongate gave him an overdose. After the Expo Awards ceremony, a sleek woman with an icy smile and a glass of wine approached Victor. Her name was Julia Hart, Irongate's regional strategist. She congratulated him, complimented him, and spoke in a way that made him feel like the star of the entire logistics industry. "Victor Hale," she said, swirling her wine. "You're the real energy behind Carter and Hale, aren't you?" Victor laughed bashfully. "I'd like to think I contribute something." "Contribute?" she repeated. "No. You carry that company. I've spoken to suppliers, clients, even other founders. Everyone knows Daniel is, well, disciplined. But you're the reason Carter and Hale is growing as fast as it is." A simple sentence. One that didn't feel like poison. One that felt like truth dipped in honey. That night, Victor didn't sleep. He replayed Julia's words again and again. You carry that company. They invited him to private dinners shortly after. Events. Executive mixers. Outings that looked harmless on the surface but were designed with surgical precision to shift the balance of loyalty. Irongate's strategy was simple. Step 1, inflate Victor's ego. Step 2, create resentment toward Daniel. Step 3, make Victor believe he deserved more power. Step 4, offer a shortcut. Step 5, turn him into the blade to cut Daniel apart. And it worked. Victor began to feel invisible in his own company. Daniel was the quiet backbone. Steady. reliable. But reliability doesn't attract applause. Clients often thanked Daniel for logistics accuracy, route optimization, system improvements, things Victor didn't fully understand. While in the background, Victor saw himself smiling and shaking hands in photos, yet getting barely a mention. Irongate sharpened this resentment every chance they got. At a private dinner in October, an Irongate director leaned back and said, "Victor, if you were with us, you'd be a VP in 6 months. Daniel is holding you back." Victor pretended to laugh it off. But that night, he drank alone, hard. He began hiding receipts, buying things on the company card he shouldn't, spending on luxuries to fill the emptiness he didn't understand. The worst mistake came in November. Victor started gambling again. Not casinos. Sports betting. Small at first, then big. And when he lost, he borrowed. Not from banks. From men who didn't wear name tags. When Irongate learned about Victor's secret debt, they didn't shame him. They saw their opening. Julia arrived at his office one night with a sleek contract folder. "You need help," she said gently. "You're drowning. Let us help you float." And then she laid out the offer. A 6-figure payout. Loan forgiveness. A senior position at Irongate. All in exchange for minor internal contributions. Victor's hands trembled. His mind raced. His ego whispered, "You deserve better than Daniel." His fear whispered, "You're already trapped." And Julia whispered the final blow. "Daniel built a system that doesn't need you anymore. You're replaceable. Let us give you a place where you matter." That sentence pushed him over the edge. He signed, not because he hated Daniel, but because he didn't know how to deal with being overshadowed. After the signing, the requests from Irongate grew darker. Leaked proposals, client lists, upcoming bids, route plans, shipping rates. Victor obeyed, first with shame, then with numbness, then with entitlement. He started justifying everything to himself. "Daniel's fine. The company is stable. I'm not hurting anyone. This is temporary. I have problems too." And Irongate kept pushing. By late November, a senior executive told Victor, "Once we eliminate Daniel, you're ours." The word eliminate terrified him. But he was in too deep to climb out. Meanwhile, Daniel watched everything slowly unravel. He noticed a client who suddenly pulled out of a contract. No explanation. He noticed Victor avoiding eye contact. He noticed proposals edited without permission. He noticed system errors only occurring when Victor handled data. But the thing that broke Daniel the most was the shift in Victor's spirit. The man who once said, "We're brothers forever," now looked like a stranger wearing his friend's face. Daniel began preparing quietly, methodically, the way a person does when they know a storm is forming on the horizon. He locked down bank access. He changed administrator passwords. He created mirrored backups of all company records. He met with his lawyer, Elaine Brooks. He hired Mason Clark. He prepared, not because he wanted the betrayal to be true, but because he feared it was. Still, he didn't confront Victor, because when your heart is breaking, sometimes silence is the only way to survive. As Christmas approached, Daniel tried to convince himself he was paranoid. After all, who sabotages a business they spent 10 years building? Who betrays the one person who'd always believed in them? Who chooses ego over loyalty? But the universe doesn't hide truths forever. And 2 weeks before Christmas, the truth finally screamed. Daniel walked into the office early that morning, snow dusting his shoulders, and heard the voice on Victor's speakerphone. "Finish the job or you're finished." Victor sobbed like a child. I don't know what to do. Daniel trusted me. I can't." Daniel stepped into the doorway. His worst fear confirmed. And the betrayal began. Who is more at fault? Victor for betraying Daniel, or Irongate for manipulating his weakness? Comment your answer. I want to see where you stand. The morning Daniel found Victor crying on the floor was not the first time something felt wrong. It was simply the first time the truth finally stopped pretending. But to understand the weight of that moment, you need to understand everything Daniel endured in the months leading up to it. Because betrayal doesn't begin the day it's revealed. It begins quietly, in whispers, shadows, and shifts too subtle for the heart to catch but too sharp for the soul to ignore. And Daniel had been ignoring them for a long time. For the past 3 months, Carter and Hale Logistics had been hit with delays that made no sense. Critical documents disappeared. Routes were mysteriously duplicated. Clients complained about late deliveries. Deliveries that Daniel personally confirmed were loaded and dispatched on time. At first, he blamed the system. Then the drivers. Then the suppliers. But the truth? The truth was sitting right across from him every morning, wearing a smile Daniel couldn't recognize anymore. It started small. One afternoon, Daniel noticed a discrepancy in the shipment reports. He approached Victor gently. "Hey, I think the reports got mixed up. Did you make any adjustments yesterday?" Victor didn't even look up from his phone. Nope. Must have been the system glitching again. Daniel wanted to believe him. But the system didn't glitch. Victor did. The next week, a long-term client abruptly canceled a major holiday contract worth $300,000. When Daniel asked why, the client simply said, "Your competitor offered better terms." Daniel hadn't even shared the updated pricing with Irongate Logistics. But someone else had. It was becoming undeniable. Something was leaking. Someone was leaking. And there were only 2 people with access to that information. Daniel began triple-checking everything Victor touched, reviewing emails, watching camera footage, matching timestamps. And the patterns formed slowly, painfully, like bruise marks blooming beneath the skin. Every time Victor handled a contract, Irongate magically responded with a counteroffer. Every time Daniel proposed a new route, Irongate offered it first. Every time Daniel pitched a rate, Irongate undercut it within hours. It wasn't coincidence. It wasn't bad luck. It wasn't a glitch. It was betrayal. And yet, Daniel didn't confront him. Why? Because confronting someone you love is harder than catching them. Instead, Daniel moved quietly. He created private backups. He encrypted financial data. He limited access without Victor noticing. He documented every inconsistency. Then, reluctantly, painfully, he hired Mason Clark. Mason was easily the most intimidating private investigator Daniel had ever met. A quiet man with steel eyes and a mind that processed information like a machine. He investigated without emotion, without judgment, without hesitation. After 2 weeks, Mason called Daniel to meet at a diner. He slid a slim folder across the table. "Everything you suspected is real," Mason said. And worse. Inside were screenshots of deleted emails, surveillance stills, a suspicious series of unexplained payments directed to Victor, and an audio recording. Victor late at night, whispering into the phone, "Don't worry. I'll get the proposal. Daniel won't suspect a thing." Daniel's chest tightened painfully, like someone was squeezing his ribs from the inside. He whispered, "Why would he do this?" Mason's eyes didn't soften. Because they made him feel important. And his ego needed the attention. That's all it takes. Daniel wanted to cry. Not from anger. From grief. The man he trusted, the man he built a life with, had sold him to the wolves for validation. That night, Daniel sat alone in the office long after everyone left. Snow fell heavily outside. Christmas lights from the street below blinked softly through the windows. He stared at the empty chair across from him, the one Victor always sat in, and felt his chest collapse. "Why?" He whispered to the empty room. He thought of their early years, sleeping on the warehouse floor during their expansion, delivering packages themselves during peak season, dreaming of a Florida branch someday, calling each other brother. It was all dust now. Still, Daniel held on to one truth. If he confronted Victor too soon, Victor would destroy evidence. And Daniel wouldn't sacrifice his company because of emotional weakness. He needed to protect everything they built, even if Victor couldn't. And so, Daniel did the hardest thing. He acted normal. He laughed at Victor's jokes, sat beside him in meetings, pretended to trust him, pretended not to see the knife behind his back. But Daniel wasn't pretending out of fear. He was pretending out of strategy. Revenge wasn't the goal. Survival was. And Victor was too dangerous to confront without proof. But even strategy couldn't stop the breaking point. Because one night, Mason called again. "Daniel, you need to hear this." He sent an audio file. Daniel listened, and his heart sank all the way to the floor. Victor, his friend, his brother, was crying into the phone. But not tears of guilt. Tears of fear. On the other end was Irongate's handler, a man with a cold, soulless voice. "You owe us, Victor. Finish the job. Send the files. Destroy the company. Or we'll destroy you." Victor begged. "Please. Please give me more time. Daniel trusted me." "I can't." The handler cut him off. "You don't have a choice." Daniel sat frozen, a mix of heartbreak, rage, and disbelief in his veins. Victor wasn't just betraying him. He was trapped. And Daniel understood two things. Victor wasn't strong enough to stop. Irongate was ready to wipe them both out. But the next morning, Daniel walked into the office early. He intended to gather more evidence, to prepare more quietly, to stay invisible. Instead, he walked into the conference room and saw Victor curled on the floor, shaking, drowning in paper, mumbling, "I can't hide it anymore. I can't betray him again. I can't." The phone crackled on the carpet beside him, and the handler whispered, "Do it, or else." That was the moment Daniel stepped into the doorway, frozen, silent, and Victor lifted his head, eyes red, hands trembling, soul broken, secret exposed. "Daniel, I can explain." But for the first time in 10 years, Daniel didn't recognize the man in front of him. Not at all. If you were Daniel, would you fire Victor immediately, or would you demand answers before making a decision? Comment which choice you would make. I'm watching your responses. Victor didn't stand up when Daniel entered the conference room. He didn't try to hide the shredded documents, didn't try to end the call, didn't try to wipe his face or pretend that nothing was wrong. He just stared at Daniel with hollow, panicked eyes, the eyes of a man who finally understood the size of the grave he had dug for himself. "Daniel," he whispered, "please, just let me explain." Daniel didn't move, didn't speak, didn't even blink. He simply stepped closer, placed a thick, sealed file on the table beside Victor, and looked at him with a calmness so cold it frightened even the silence in the room. Victor's gaze fell to the folder. What is that?" Daniel's voice was low, steady, heartbreak wrapped in steel. "Proof." Victor's breath caught in his throat. "Proof of what?" Daniel stepped back, as though proximity to Victor physically hurt him. "Proof of everything you've been doing," he said softly. "For 6 months." Victor's lips parted in disbelief, but the denial never came. He knew. He knew Daniel had caught him. Not just the sabotage, not just the leaks, but the lies. All of them. The handler on the phone must have heard Daniel's voice, because he hissed sharply, "Victor, get rid of him. Now." Victor panicked and scrambled for the phone, switching it off with shaking hands. "Daniel, I swear I didn't want to hurt you. I was just," he choked. "I was overwhelmed, I was desperate." Daniel lifted a hand. Not aggressively, not angrily, just signaling him to stop. Victor froze. Because for the first time, Daniel looked at him not with suspicion, not with pain, but with finality. "Victor," Daniel said quietly, "when did you stop being my brother?" Victor's face crumpled. I never stopped, I made a mistake." Daniel's jaw clenched. A muscle twitched beneath his cheek. "A mistake," he repeated, bitterness finally bleeding through. "A mistake is forgetting to send an invoice. A mistake is misplacing a contract draft. A mistake is double booking a delivery truck." He stepped closer, eyes locked onto Victor. "What you did," Daniel whispered, "was a choice." Victor's entire body seemed to fold inward under the truth. He broke. "I'm sorry," he sobbed. "I'm sorry, Daniel. I didn't know what else to do. They had me, they had my debts, my secrets. I didn't mean to." Daniel cut him off again. "Then why didn't you come to me? Why didn't you tell me the truth? Why did Irongate know more about your problems than I did?" Victor shook violently, head in his hands. "I was ashamed," he choked. "I didn't want you to see me as weak. I didn't want you to think I couldn't contribute. They made me feel like I mattered more there than here." Daniel exhaled sharply, the kind of exhale a man makes when reality finally sinks in deeper than denial ever allowed. Victor didn't argue. He couldn't, because it was the truth. Daniel walked to the window, staring out at the December snowfall blanketing the street. Christmas wreaths hung from lampposts. Strings of lights twinkled in shop windows. It looked peaceful. But inside the room, a decade-long bond was dying in real time. When Daniel finally spoke again, his voice was different, colder, resolved. "You're done here, Victor." Victor lifted his head slowly, as though the words were physical blows. "Daniel, please." "You're fired," Daniel said, turning around. "Effective immediately." Victor crawled forward, desperation twisting his face. "Daniel, please. I can fix this. I'll tell you everything. I'll undo what they made me do. No. One word. Sharp enough to slice the air." Daniel stepped back again, out of reach. "You've been leaking our contracts, our proposals, our systems. You've pushed clients into Irongate's hands. You've compromised our routes. You manipulated documents. You let them use you to poison the company we built together." His voice cracked, only once. "And you lied to me every single day while calling me your brother." Victor sobbed into his hands. Daniel continued, steadying himself. "I'm removing your access. Your accounts, your passwords, your email, your devices. Everything." Victor reached out like a drowning man trying to grab anything floating. "Daniel, please, don't do this. I was scared. They threatened me. They said they'd destroy me if I didn't cooperate." Daniel's eyes softened, not with forgiveness, but with deep, exhausted sadness. "They already did destroy you, Victor." He stepped forward, but not with compassion, with finality. "You just didn't realize it yet." He placed a company property return form beside Victor and slid it gently toward him. "Sign it. Mason and Elaine will handle the rest." He turned to leave, but Victor grabbed his wrist, weakly, desperately. "Daniel, please, I need you. You're all I have left." Daniel slowly pulled his wrist away. "You should have thought of that before you chose them." He walked to the door, paused, turned his head slightly, and delivered the final cut. "I hope one day you learn that loyalty is worth more than attention." He walked out, left Victor on the floor, left the betrayal behind, left the pain in the room. And as he stepped into the hallway, Daniel felt two things at once: heartbreak and liberation. Something inside him had shattered, but something else was being rebuilt in its place. And little did he know, Irongate wasn't finished with Victor. Not even close. In fact, now that Daniel had removed him from the company, Victor was more disposable to them than ever. Do you think Daniel made the right decision firing Victor immediately? Or should he have given him one last chance? Drop your thoughts. I'm reading every comment. Victor Hale didn't remember how long he stayed on the conference room floor after Daniel left. Minutes. Hours. Time blurred. All he knew was the sound of his own breathing, sharp, uneven, almost animal, and the crushing realization that everything he feared had finally happened. He had lost Daniel. He had lost the company. He had lost the only person who ever truly believed in him. The moment Daniel walked out that door, Victor felt something break inside him. Not a crack, not a fracture, an implosion. He had thought Irongate was his lifeline. But without Daniel, Irongate was now a noose. and the rope was tightening. He tried calling Julia Hart. No answer. He tried calling the Irongate handler. Line disconnected. He tried messaging the executives who had courted him for months. Blocked. The silence was deafening. Irongate had what they needed. Contracts copied, proposals leaked, internal systems weakened. Now Victor. He was worthless. Disposable. A used matchstick. By noon, his personal phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Your debt is past due. Pay by Friday. You know what happens if you don't. Victor's breathing stuttered. They were watching. Irongate wasn't just dropping him. They were delivering him back to the wolves he owed money to. The very wolves they promised to save him from. His hands shook violently as he grabbed his coat and stumbled out of the building. He didn't even hear employees whisper as he passed. Didn't see the looks of confusion. Didn't notice the HR manager pulling the company laptop from his hands. He didn't even notice the winter air slapping his face as he stepped outside. His mind was a storm. Daniel, on the other hand, didn't have time to process his grief. Because the minute Victor walked out of the building, disaster hit like a tidal wave. 3 clients called within an hour. 2 threatened to pull contracts. 1 demanded an emergency meeting. Another accused Carter and Hale Logistics of unprofessionalism due to leaked information. Daniel spent the entire afternoon in crisis mode, running on nothing but adrenaline and disappointment. His lawyer, Elaine Brooks, came to the office at 2 p.m. Daniel, I need you to understand something, she said, placing her laptop down. You did the right thing. Victor wasn't going to stop, and Irongate was prepping to launch a takeover attempt. Daniel exhaled slowly. I know, but knowing doesn't make it hurt less. Elaine gave him a sympathetic look. Betrayal never hurts because of the act, she said gently. It hurts because of the person. Daniel stared at the window overlooking the snowy street, where a young couple was laughing together wrapped in matching scarves. Christmas was everywhere. Twinkling lights, wreaths, holiday music floating through the air. But joy felt far away. He turned back to Elaine. What now? He asked. She opened her notebook. Step 1, secure your remaining clients. Step 2, fortify your contracts. Step 3, expose Irongate's unlawful methods, but only when you have enough evidence. Daniel nodded. And Victor? Elaine hesitated, then said softly, Victor made his choice. You can't save him from the consequences. Daniel didn't respond, but he felt something burn deep in his chest. Not anger. Not revenge. Not bitterness. A quiet, heavy sadness. The kind that buries itself under your ribs. Victor returned home that night to find his wife, Emily, sitting on the edge of their couch with her arms crossed tightly over her chest. She didn't greet him. Didn't ask if he was okay. Didn't hide the disgust in her eyes. Where were you? She demanded. Victor didn't have the strength to lie. Not tonight. I lost my job, he said quietly. Emily's face didn't soften. If anything, it sharpened. You lost your job, she repeated. Or you finally got caught. Victor's stomach twisted. She knew. She had known for weeks. She'd seen the secret messages, the sudden money, the late nights, the shift in his personality. I tried to fix it, Victor whispered. They pressured me. They promised. They promised. Emily snapped. Victor, you betrayed your own business. Your own best friend. And now you're surprised they turned on you. I didn't mean to. But you did, she interrupted. And you know what? I'm done. I'm done covering your lies. I'm done watching you destroy everything around you. She stood. I'm taking the kids to my sister's. I can't be here when your mess explodes. Before Victor could speak, she grabbed her bag, walked out, and closed the door gently behind her. That gentle click hurt more than any slam. Victor sank onto the floor, head in his hands, sobbing into the empty silence. For the first time, he felt truly alone. No Daniel. No marriage. No money. No safety. Just consequences. Meanwhile, Daniel sat in his office long past midnight, combing through documents Mason had uncovered. He found evidence of Irongate sabotaging 3 other companies the same way Victor said. It was a pattern, a predatory strategy. "We need to take this to court," Mason said over the phone. "We will," Daniel replied. "But not yet. I need to strengthen my side first." Mason paused. "You're thinking of Victor, aren't you?" Daniel closed his eyes. "I don't want him to go to prison." "You don't owe him mercy," Mason said quietly. Daniel's voice cracked just slightly. "I know. But he was my brother once." The line went silent. Outside, Christmas lights glowed softly across the city, a peaceful world unaware that 2 former brothers were falling apart in different ways. Daniel finally locked up the office and stepped out into the snow. As he walked to his car, he whispered to himself, "Lord, guide me, because this is bigger than betrayal, and I don't know how to move forward." He didn't know that at that same moment, several men were knocking on Victor's door. Men he owed money to. Men Irongate had tipped off. Men who didn't leave without payment. Victor opened the door with swollen eyes. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. One of them simply said, "You missed your deadline." And Victor knew. His real nightmare was just beginning. Do you think Victor deserves the downfall he's facing? Or do you believe Irongate is the true villain here? Drop your take. The comments on this one will be heated. The knock came just after 1 a.m. Daniel was still awake, not because he wanted to be, but because sleep had become a luxury he couldn't afford. His eyes were burning, his mind replaying the day on a loop, and the silence in the room felt heavier than the December snowfall outside. When he opened the door, he didn't expect to see Mason Clark standing there, bundled in a heavy coat, snowflakes clinging to his eyebrows. "Mason." Daniel blinked. "It's after midnight." Mason pushed past him, urgency in every step. "We have a problem," he said. "And you need to see this tonight." Daniel frowned, closing the door. "What happened?" Mason set a thick envelope on the table. "This," he said, tapping it once, "is everything Irongate has been trying to bury for the last 5 years." Daniel opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside were dozens of files, photos, anonymized statements, financial transfers, and surveillance stills. Mason spoke slowly, voice cold and measured. "I've been digging deeper and deeper into Victor's involvement. But the more I dug, the more I realized something." Daniel looked up. "This wasn't about Victor," Mason continued. "He wasn't the target. He was the tool." Daniel felt a chill run through him. "What do you mean?" Mason pulled out the top file. 3 years ago, Irongate used an employee inside a competitor's company in Jacksonville. Promised him a promotion, money, status. Used him to leak routes and contracts. When they were done, they sabotaged him, pinned illegal activities on him, and watched the entire company collapse. He pulled out a second file. 2 years ago, same pattern. Different city. Different industry. They recruited a female accountant working for a rising freight company. They made her feel important, isolated her, manipulated her, then used her to expose confidential information. When the company fell, she went to jail for fraud, even though she was set up. He pulled out a third. Last year, another one. A young sales rep at a warehouse chain. Irongate groomed him, praised him, fed his ego, then blackmailed him. He tried to escape their influence. They destroyed him financially. Daniel sank into a chair, eyes wide. "Why?" he whispered. "Why go to that length?" Mason leaned forward. "Because Irongate doesn't compete. They eliminate." He let the word hang in the air. Daniel's chest tightened. "And Victor?" He managed. Mason slid another set of documents toward him. Was next on their list. Already marked. Once they used him to weaken your company, they planned to pin illegal leaks on him, not you. He flipped to a page with a printed message. Irongate internal email. Confidential. Target marked VH. After extraction, cut ties. Prepare containment narrative. Daniel's blood ran cold. They were going to destroy him, Daniel whispered. Mason nodded slowly. They already started. Daniel stood abruptly, pacing the room. Jesus. Victor thought he was choosing them. But they were never on his side. Exactly, Mason said. They don't recruit partners. They recruit sacrifices. Daniel's fists clenched. How long have you known this? 2 weeks, Mason admitted. But I didn't want to bring it to you until I had enough proof. Now I do. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. So Victor was manipulated, blackmailed, exploited, and then discarded. That's the pattern, Mason said. He wasn't their golden boy. He was their fall guy. Daniel's eyes burned. The betrayal still hurt. That wound wasn't gone. But now, another emotion slipped in beside it. Pity. Sadness. A strange ache for the man Victor once was. Where is he now? Daniel asked quietly. Mason sighed. I tracked him. Debt collectors visited him tonight. Ugly crowd. He barely escaped. He's hiding in a motel off Redwood Street. Daniel felt his chest twist. Does he know he's in danger? No. He thinks Irongate just abandoned him. He doesn't know he was the target. Daniel sat heavily, burying his face in his hands. Mason, what am I supposed to do with this? He betrayed me. He almost destroyed everything. He lied over and over. I know, Mason said, but this is bigger than Victor's betrayal now. Daniel lifted his gaze. This is criminal. This is corruption. This is a corporate trap designed to destroy people who never see it coming. Daniel stared at the files again. Irongate doesn't just want my company, he whispered. They want me out of the game completely. Mason nodded. They picked Victor because he was emotional, insecure, and easy to sway. That's how they work. Daniel took a slow breath. What happens if we don't act? Mason didn't sugarcoat it. You'll lose everything within 6 months. The words hit like a punch. Daniel closed his eyes, then opened them with a different fire. Resolve. Strength. Something hardened inside him. We're not going to let that happen, he said. They chose the wrong company this time. The next morning, Daniel met with his lawyer, Elaine Brooks. She read through Mason's findings, her eyes widening with every page. This is massive, she whispered. Irongate could face multiple charges. Fraud, corporate espionage, coercion. This can take down half their board. Daniel nodded. But we need to move carefully. If they sense we're onto them, they'll bury evidence. Elaine closed the folder. And Victor. Daniel swallowed. He deserves to know the truth. Elaine hesitated. Are you sure? After everything he did. Daniel looked at the window, watching snow fall in soft spirals. I don't forgive him for betraying me, he said quietly. But no human deserves what Irongate planned for him. Elaine nodded slowly. You're a better man than most. Daniel didn't respond. Because inside, he didn't feel better. He felt broken, torn, conflicted. But he also felt something stronger. Purpose. Irongate didn't just betray him. They used the one person he trusted most. Corrupted him. Destroyed him. Left him to drown. This wasn't just business anymore. This was war. And Daniel refused to let Irongate write the ending. By evening, Mason called again. Daniel, I found something else. Daniel stiffened. What now? An email chain dated last month. Irongate executives discussing how to finalize elimination of Victor Hale after the leaks. Daniel felt his breath catch. Meaning what? Meaning, Mason said quietly. They were planning to pin criminal charges on him, and then leak it to the media. Daniel's voice dropped to a whisper. They were going to ruin him forever. Yes, Mason said. And if we don't intervene, Victor will go down for crimes Irongate committed. Daniel closed his eyes. The betrayal still burned. But now the injustice burned hotter. Set up a meeting with him, Daniel said finally. I need to tell him the truth. Mason paused. You sure? Daniel looked out the window at the glowing Christmas lights. Yes, he said softly. Because no matter what he did, no one deserves to be destroyed like this. And as he hung up the phone, Daniel felt something shift inside him. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But responsibility. Because Irongate wasn't just a rival. They were predators. And Daniel was done being prey. If you were Daniel, would you warn Victor about Irongate's plan to destroy him? Or leave him to face the consequences alone? Drop your honest answer in the comments. The Redwood Motel sat crooked on the edge of town like a forgotten relic from the 1980s. Its neon sign flickered weakly in the snow, buzzing against the winter night. Half the parking lot lamps were dead. The other half cast long shadows across the cracked pavement. Mason waited inside his car, engine humming low. From the window of room 12, he saw blinds shift. Victor was inside. Alive, barely. Daniel stepped out of the passenger seat, pulling his coat tighter around him. His breath fogged in the frigid air. His heart felt heavier than the night sky overhead. Last chance to turn around, Mason said quietly. We can handle Irongate without involving him. You don't owe him a thing. Daniel stared at the dim window of room 12. I know, he said. But this isn't about owing him. It's about the truth. He walked to the door before he could second-guess himself. Mason stayed in the car, watching carefully. Daniel knocked twice. There was a rustle inside. A pause. Then the lock clicked, and the door creaked open just 3 inches. Victor Hale's eyes appeared in the gap, and Daniel barely recognized the man he used to call brother. His hair was disheveled. His eyes were bloodshot. His face carried the raw, wild fear of someone who had seen the edge. Daniel. Victor croaked. Daniel exhaled slowly. Yeah, he said. It's me. Victor opened the door wider. He didn't say come in. He didn't have to. Daniel stepped inside. The room smelled like stale beer and panic. A broken lamp lay on the floor. The bedsheets were tangled. Victor's hands shook as he tried to put on a brave face. What are you doing here? Victor whispered. You shouldn't see me like this. Daniel looked directly at him. Victor, we need to talk. Victor sank onto the edge of the bed, burying his face in his hands. I know you hate me. He choked on the words. Daniel, I swear to God, I didn't mean to ruin your life. I didn't think. I was scared. I was stupid. I was weak. It's not just about what you did, Daniel interrupted softly. It's about what they did to you. Victor froze. He slowly lifted his head. They, he whispered. Daniel nodded, pulling the thick envelope Mason had prepared from his coat. Irongate. Victor flinched as if the word itself slapped him. Daniel sat across from him and laid the envelope on the bed between them. These are internal documents, emails, and testimonies from other people they used. People just like you. Victor stared, confusion turning to dread. They didn't recruit you because they valued you. They didn't choose you because you were talented or special. Daniel swallowed hard. They chose you because you were vulnerable. Easy to manipulate. Easy to discard. Victor's lips trembled. Discard? He whispered. Daniel opened the envelope and slid a page toward him. Victor read the email slowly, then reread it. Then his hands began to shake violently. Target marked, VH. After extraction, cut ties. Prepare containment narrative. Victor's breath hitched. His body curled inward. He choked. They were planning to pin everything on me? Yes, Daniel said quietly. You weren't the partner you thought you were. You were the scapegoat. Victor made a sound Daniel had never heard from him before. A hollow, broken sob that shattered the last pieces of his pride. He pressed his forehead against his palms, rocking back and forth. I ruined my best friend's company, my family, my life, for people who never even wanted me. Daniel's chest tightened. You didn't ruin my company, he said calmly. You hurt it. You hurt me. But I can rebuild. Victor looked up, tears streaking his face. But my life, he whispered. I lost everything. Emily left. The kids won't talk to me. Debt collectors came to my door. Irongate ghosted me. I don't know who I am anymore. Daniel sat quietly, then said, You're a man who messed up. A man who got caught in something bigger than he realized. Not a monster. Victor shook his head violently. No, I am the monster. I betrayed you. I betrayed myself. And I don't deserve anything but. Victor. Daniel's voice was firm. Stop. Victor froze. Daniel leaned in. You were wrong. But you were also used. Both things can be true. Victor trembled, tears falling again. And you still came here, he whispered. After everything I did. Daniel nodded once. Because Irongate is coming for me next. And if we don't work together, both of us will lose everything. The room went silent. Victor swallowed hard. You want me to help you take them down? I want you to tell the truth, Daniel said. That's all. Victor stared at him, broken, afraid, ashamed, but for the first time in months. Honest. I'll do it, he whispered. Daniel exhaled, relief washing over him. Good. Tomorrow morning, we meet with my lawyer. Then we go to the authorities with everything. Victor nodded. But then his voice dropped. There's something you don't know, Daniel. Daniel stiffened. What is it? Victor hesitated, fear flickering across his eyes. Irongate didn't just groom me. His voice dropped to a whisper. They threatened me. Daniel leaned in. With what? Victor's hands shook as he reached into his bag and pulled out a small black USB drive. This, he said. This is what they used to control me. Daniel stared at it. What's on it? Victor swallowed. Everything, he whispered. All the secrets. All the evidence. All the leverage they used. Daniel's heart thudded. Why didn't you show me this before? Victor closed his eyes. Because I was scared they would kill me. Daniel's breath caught. Victor, are you saying they would? Yes. Victor's voice cracked. Irongate isn't just corrupt. They're dangerous. Daniel stared at the USB in stunned silence. And then a car engine rumbled outside. A black SUV slowed in front of the motel. Victor's eyes widened. They found me. Daniel's blood turned to ice. Mason leapt out of his car, shouting Daniel's name. The SUV doors opened. Men stepped out. Victor whispered. It's them. Daniel grabbed him by the arm. Victor, run. If you saw the black SUV pull up, would you run, call for help, or confront the men? Comment below. The instant Daniel yanked Victor toward the back door of the motel room, everything around them exploded into motion. Mason shouted their names from across the parking lot. The black SUV doors swung open. 3 men stepped out, tall, broad, faces expressionless, moving with the cold efficiency of people who had done this too many times. Victor's voice was a strangled whisper. They're here for the USB. They won't let me leave alive. Daniel tightened his grip. Not tonight. He shoved open the back door, and the freezing winter air rushed in. They stumbled into the narrow alley behind the motel, shoes slipping on patches of ice. Mason sprinted toward them, panting. They blocked the main entrance. We need to go around the back lot. But before he could finish, a deep voice echoed from behind. Victor Hale. They froze. One of the men stood by the motel door, a hand inside his coat, not reaching for a gun. Worse, a phone. He lifted it slowly, showing Victor the screen. A picture of Emily. And the kids. Victor stopped breathing. Daniel swore under his breath. This just got worse, Mason muttered. The man spoke calmly. You know the terms, Victor. You come with us quietly, or your family pays the price. Victor's knees nearly buckled. Daniel stepped in front of him. You're threatening his children, he barked. The man's expression didn't change. Irongate doesn't make threats. They make guarantees. Daniel's pulse hammered. "Mason," he whispered urgently, "take Victor. Get him to the car. What about you?" Mason whispered back, "I'll stall them." Mason hesitated for half a second, then grabbed Victor and dragged him behind the motel. Daniel turned back to the men. "You want him. You'll have to go through me." The man tilted his head. "All right." He lifted his hand, signaling the other two men. "Go get him." The two advanced toward the alley. Daniel ran. Not away, but toward the SUV. It was insane. Reckless. Desperate. But it was exactly what they didn't expect. Daniel sprinted into the open, forcing the men to chase him instead of going after Victor. Snow kicked up behind him. The motel lights flickered like warning signs. He reached the SUV and, with every ounce of adrenaline, grabbed a handful of gravel and threw it into the driver's face just as he was stepping out. The man roared, stumbling back. The distraction bought precious seconds. Mason shoved Victor into his car and yelled, "Daniel, get in." Daniel dashed across the lot as the men recovered and lunged after him. Mason slammed the car into gear and ripped out of the parking space. Daniel dove into the back seat, yanking the door shut just as Mason floored it. Tires screeched. Snow exploded under the wheels. The SUV jerked forward behind them. Victor clutched the USB like it was an oxygen tank. "They won't stop," he whispered. "They'll chase us forever." Daniel grabbed Victor by the collar, forcing him to look him in the eye. "Then we stop them first." The chase tore through the dark roads outside the motel. Mason pushed the car hard, weaving between empty lanes, skidding around icy corners. But the SUV stayed close. Too close. Mason faster. Daniel barked. "This is a Corolla, not a miracle." Mason shot back, turning sharply. Victor hid his face in his hands. "It's over," he murmured. "They'll kill me. They'll kill all of us. Daniel, I'm sorry. I never wanted." "Victor," Daniel snapped, "pull yourself together. You're not dying tonight. But you don't understand. Then make me understand." Victor swallowed, hands shaking violently. "They didn't just use me. They forced me. They said if I didn't cooperate, they'd expose something. Something from years ago." Daniel stiffened. "What did you do?" Victor looked hollow, like he'd aged 10 years in 2 days. "When my father was sick," he whispered, "I took money from the company to pay his medical bills." Daniel's jaw clenched. "Victor." "I put it back." Victor cried. "With interest. But Irongate found out and said they'd leak it, destroy me, destroy my family if I didn't work for them. I swear, Daniel, I tried to pull away. But they owned me." Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. Victor wasn't excused. But he was human. Another mistake. Another wound Irongate exploited. Another chain they wrapped around him. Mason gripped the wheel tighter. "We're not outrunning them much longer." Daniel leaned forward. "We don't need to outrun them. We need to expose them." Victor whispered, "I have everything they've done on this USB. Every illegal transfer. Every blackmail case. Every ruined business. They kept it as leverage, but I copied it." Daniel stared at Victor. "You copied it?" Victor nodded. "Because a part of me hoped that one day I'd have the courage to run." The SUV rammed the back of their car. Victor screamed. Mason gritted his teeth. "We're out of time." Daniel scanned the road. A sign appeared ahead. "Police station. 0.7 miles." Daniel pointed. "Drive there. Now." Mason stomped the accelerator. The Corolla thundered forward, engine screaming. The SUV closed in again until suddenly, a horn blared. A semi-truck barreled into the intersection, forcing the SUV to brake hard. Just enough delay. Mason swerved into the police station parking lot and slammed the brakes. All 3 men stumbled out of the car, racing toward the entrance. Behind them, The SUV hesitated at the edge of the lot. The men inside didn't follow. They couldn't. Not on police property. Daniel grabbed Victor by the back of his collar and dragged him inside the station. The moment they crossed the threshold, Victor collapsed onto a bench, shaking uncontrollably. Daniel placed a hand on his shoulder. "It's over," he whispered. Victor shook his head. "No," he said hoarsely. "It's just beginning." An officer approached. "Sir, do you need assistance?" Daniel held up the USB. "Yes," he said steadily. "We're here to report corporate crimes, coercion, and attempted harm. And we have proof." The officer's demeanor shifted instantly. "Come with me." Daniel and Victor followed him into a private room. For the first time in months, Victor took a real, full breath. Daniel didn't say anything. But he didn't leave his side either. No forgiveness yet. But no abandonment. Something in the middle. Something human. Outside, the black SUV drove away silently into the snow. But the war with Irongate was far from over. If you were Daniel, would you fully protect Victor? Or still keep distance after everything he did? Drop your take. The police interrogation room was cold. Not winter cold, but bureaucratic cold. Fluorescent lights humming. Metal table. 2 chairs. A window that wasn't really a window. Victor sat hunched forward, hands clasped so tightly that his knuckles had gone white. Daniel sat across from him, calm but iron solid. The detective entered, closing the door behind him. "Gentlemen," he said, lowering himself into the chair, "I've reviewed the documents you brought. If what's on that USB is authentic, Irongate is going to collapse." Victor swallowed. "It's authentic," he whispered. "Every file, every transfer, every message." The detective nodded slowly. "We'll need your sworn statement." Victor nodded, trembling. 4 hours, Victor talked. He confessed everything. Irongate's grooming. Their threats. The blackmail. The instructions they gave him to betray Daniel. The money they used to trap him. The evidence he secretly copied. The plan they had to pin everything on him once he delivered what they wanted. Daniel sat silently, watching Victor unravel years of secrecy, fear, and guilt. At one point, the detective leaned back and exhaled. "This is bigger than corporate corruption," he said. "This is racketeering, extortion, fraud, coercion, witness intimidation." Victor stared at the table. "I know." Daniel finally spoke. "Victor, we're going to take them down." Victor's eyes welled. "You'd really help me after everything?" Daniel nodded once. "I'm not helping you. I'm helping justice." Victor looked down, tears dripping onto the metal table. "That's more mercy than I deserve." Daniel didn't correct him. But he didn't disagree either. By noon, the police transferred the USB contents to the state cybercrimes unit. By evening, 3 judges had signed emergency warrants. Irongate's tower, all glass and steel, was about to be cracked open. At 8:13 p.m., a convoy of unmarked cars rolled toward Irongate HQ. Police. Federal investigators. Cybercrime agents. It was a quiet operation at first. No sirens, no flashing lights. Inside, Irongate executives were having their final year-end board meeting. Champagne. Performance charts. Plans for expansion. They didn't see the storm coming. Agents entered the building. Security escorted everyone out. Executives were separated, devices confiscated, computers frozen. It was surgical. Precise. Deadly. By the time the CEO realized what was happening, it was already too late. Agents had found secret offshore accounts, internal emails proving coercion, blackmail archives, recorded calls, evidence of 6 businesses sabotaged, and the master file labeled containment strategies, high-risk assets. Victor Hale's name was at the top. Irongate fell in a single night. Daniel and Victor watched the news unfold from Daniel's office. The Christmas tree in the corner glowed softly, casting warm light across the room. The TV anchor spoke in a steady voice. Multiple executives taken into federal custody. Charges ranging from fraud to extortion. Evidence indicating years of illegal corporate espionage. Victor sank into the chair, hand over his mouth. "They're gone," he whispered. "They're actually gone." Daniel nodded slowly. "Justice catches up eventually." Victor looked at him, eyes filled with emotion. "Daniel, I don't know how to thank you." Daniel looked out the window, watching snow drift peacefully across the street. "You don't need to thank me," he said quietly. "Just live differently." Victor nodded, voice trembling. "I will." There was a long silence. Then Victor said softly, "Are we ever going to be what we were?" Daniel didn't answer immediately. He took a slow breath. "Victor, what we were died the day you betrayed me." He looked over, meeting Victor's eyes. "But what we become next, that's up to us." Victor lowered his gaze. "That's fair." Daniel added, "I can't forget what you did. Forgiveness isn't instant. But I'm willing to start, somewhere." Victor's voice broke. "Somewhere is more than I deserve." Daniel's tone softened. "You deserved the truth. You deserved a chance to stand up and do what was right. And today you did." Victor nodded, wiping his eyes. For the first time in years. 2 days later, Christmas Eve arrived. Daniel found himself in a community center in downtown Chicago, where dozens of local families gathered for the annual toy drive. Lights shimmered overhead. Holiday music floated through the air. The smell of cinnamon and warm cookies filled the room. Victor walked through the doors nervously, holding 2 small presents, one for each of his kids. Emily had agreed to let him see them for a few hours. He spotted Daniel across the room. Daniel gave a small, quiet nod. Victor returned it. It wasn't friendship. Not yet. But it was peace. For tonight, that was enough. Victor knelt as his children ran into his arms, their laughter echoing above the crowd. He hugged them tightly, whispering promises he intended to keep this time. Daniel watched from a distance, something easing inside him. Not forgiveness. Not fully. But the soft beginning of something new. A woman beside him, an organizer, glanced over. "Is that your brother?" she asked. Daniel considered the question, then answered, "He used to be. Maybe he will be again. Christmas has a way of surprising you." She smiled warmly. "That it does." That night, as Daniel walked to his car under the falling snow, he felt lighter. Not because everything was perfect, but because the truth had finally been set free. Irongate had fallen. Victor had chosen redemption. Daniel had chosen justice with compassion. And somehow, in the cold heart of winter, hope had found its way in. He looked up at the glowing city skyline, hands in his pockets, breath forming soft clouds. The world felt quiet, peaceful, possible. Daniel whispered to himself, "New year, new beginnings." And for the first time in a very long time, he believed it. Would you have given Victor a second chance? Or walked away forever? Comment your honest answer.